Naomi, what's your memories of the independence referendum 10 years ago?
So I remember people were using Facebook a lot at the time, and I was quite open about the fact that I voted against it, and I got quite a lot of hate for that. A lot of people said that that was wrong, and I do remember it quite vividly because I remember actually being quite upset about it. I was getting abusive messages, so yeah, I do remember it, yeah.
I mean, that to many would be a surprise.
I mean, it wasn't very nice. I remember a lot of older people having a lot to say about the fact that I was voting no. But I think a lot of people who voted no maybe kept it quiet because obviously, you know, no was the winning answer. So I think I was maybe too loud about it. I voted against it. I just thought that at the time that was maybe the best option. So at the time, a lot of kind of independent countries were maybe bigger, and I think Scotland were lucky enough to have a lot of good things that England maybe didn't have, but maybe it was nice to still be in a partnership with another country. So I think it was good to keep Scotland. There's sort of free prescriptions, free education, a lot of benefits for people with young children and just things like that we've got in Scotland, but we had it whilst we were still connected to England. So I didn't see the point in becoming independent because we still had the things that they didn't have.
And what about today? If there was a referendum tomorrow, would it still be no?
Since Brexit, I don't really know. I would maybe consider going for yes. I don't know. I think a lot of promises are made by the people in charge when these kind of referendums are going on. So it would really depend on what was being promised. But there is a chance that I would change the answer to yes.
And what do you think? You know, obviously Nicola Sturgeon had her hopes of another referendum blocked by the English government. What's your thoughts on that?
I do think it would be quite silly and maybe unfair to have another referendum, because if the answer had been the opposite one, they wouldn't have then went back and given everyone a second chance. So it does seem maybe a bit unfair. I mean, are they going to keep doing referendums until they get the answer they want? I'm not sure.
What about, you know, do you think Scotland should be entitled to have, you know, let's say every 20 years or something, hold a referendum?
Every 20 years, yes. But yeah, I think maybe every 20 years, maybe every 15 years or so, I guess, now that time's passed. But I don't think they should be doing these every 5 years or so, because if they do that, they are just going to keep going until they get the answer they want. And life doesn't really work like that.
It sort of first came about when I was still in school, and then I actually voted just after I'd left school. I played professional football at the time, so it was obviously a bit of conversation amongst teammates and stuff like that. So although I don't actually physically remember going in to vote, I did vote, but I don't remember going in. I do remember a lot of the chatter about it and stuff like that.
Who did you vote for?
Am I allowed to say that? To Remain.
Why was that?
Just at the time, to be honest, I probably was quite comfortable with what was going on at the time. I was young enough to not really know any different, and it was actually just from the opinions I'd heard, what I took in and stuff like that, that I thought it seemed the right call.
And would you vote the same way now?
I definitely think I would look into it a lot more. I've probably not in the time since done enough research to confidently say I would stick with my vote or not. I wouldn't say I felt the same at the time, that I wouldn't say I feel strongly either way about it, that I would definitely say one or the other. I think it's got a lot of nuance to it.
Yeah, and in terms of, you know, future referendums for Scotland, and now it looks like the door is closed because the English government legally blocked that challenge by Nicola Sturgeon. Would you like to see something maybe every 20 years, whatever, and say, look, we've got to have a right to do this?
I think that's the thing is democracy like that's always good, that, you know, even if you don't agree with it, it's like actually you probably don't want the door to be closed permanently. That's like actually there should maybe be something in place that says every so often we do look at this and review it and at least ask the question so we know whether it's the right thing or not.
Nova, you obviously voted at the time. What's your memories of that?
So I remember feeling like it was quite a big deal, to be honest, because, you know, it's the first time you feel like you get some responsibility and you're partaking in something that makes you feel like an adult, I suppose. I remember enjoying the process because it was a bit of a novelty, but especially when it's the first time. Honestly, did I know much about the parties? Did I know much about what I was actually voting for? Probably not. And to be fair, I think it comes down to you don't really get taught that in school, like not too excessively anyway. So I think you kind of go into it just hearing what my mum and dad's opinions were, and I thought, well, if they think that, then I think that. But I enjoyed the process for sure.
And how did you vote?
How did I vote? I went to the local school, and I can't even remember who I voted for, to be fair.
Really?
I want to say, can I say who I think it was?
Yeah.
I'm sure it was SNP, but honestly I actually can't even remember, and it's the one and only time I've voted.
You haven't voted since?
I've not voted since, no.
And what's, obviously, is that an impact on you, the fact that you've not voted again?
Do you know what? I honestly just think that I'm not big in politics, and I think it is what it is, whatever the outcome. Is it going to greatly affect me in a selfish way? No, it's not something that I put a lot of time into. It's not something I put a lot of interest into. Sometimes I think I should. Sometimes I think it's well worthwhile everybody knowing what's going on. But my mentality is kind of, at the end of the day, no matter what the vote's going to be, I'm going to get up in the morning, get on with my day, do my work, make my money, no matter what party gets voted for.
Do you think that Scotland should have another referendum at some point, in the not too distant future?
I think at one point, definitely. I don't know how big a deal, well, a referendum's always going to be a big deal for everyone, I suppose, but I think it's something that will come into play at one point. With the pros and the cons of it, I just don't know. I never know what to believe when it comes to politics, to be fair.
I voted yes last time, 10 years ago just about. I was still at school at that point, 17-year-old still at school, so it was a huge talking point. You could tell, like, at school it was something really big that was happening, something really important was going on. You'd obviously kind of lived through elections and things like that, but never really touched you. But this time it was completely different. And I think at that time as well, they were talking about whether they were going to allow 16, 17-year-olds to vote or not. So that was kind of another way that you were brought into it without really knowing. But because you obviously had people talking about if you should or shouldn't and why not. So you were listening to all that going on as well. But I think it was really like a momentous thing, and it was really exciting at the time, but you could feel it was like a tangible sort of like just not knowing what was going to happen, and people were getting really sort of animated about it, and people that even like teachers and like people in the community, older people that you'd never probably seen them getting so like not riled but animated about this vote that was going to happen. So that was a really interesting part of it as well, and something really exciting and amazing to be involved in and to be like allowed to take part in as well.
I mean, I spoke to some other people during the course of these interviews, and they said, some of them said that they didn't really know enough about it at the time. Some said they understood it a bit better than others. What was your sort of take on it?
So I knew all about it. I was watching all the TV debates, and I was in modern studies class at the time as well, so it was quite a big talking point then, and found myself sort of listening to both sides of it, of course, but even picking up on the way that things were communicated. And I then went on and did communications and PR at university after that, because I was so like enthralled by the way that this was being discussed and the different ways that people were talking about it. So I picked up on that and was really, really interested in it.
Obviously, we're 10 years further down the line now. Would you still vote the same way?
Yeah, I would absolutely vote the same way. If there was a referendum tomorrow, I'd be voting yes. I think in the last 10 years, with everything that's happened, I think it would be, I don't know, a bit ridiculous to think that we couldn't manage better ourselves. And I think that it's just kind of a natural way for countries to govern and operate themselves as an independent nation. I think if you were to have the offer on the table to join the UK from being an independent nation outside it, you would it'd be ridiculous. So yeah, definitely would vote yes tomorrow.
Some people I've spoken to, the counter side to that is the fact that we've seen sort of the SNP maybe not having the best time of it over the past 2, 3, 4 years. Do you honestly think Scotland would be able to stand on its own 2 feet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that independence isn't all about the SNP, and with the chaos that we've had from Westminster in the last 10 years, I don't think it's even comparable to what's going on there. So yeah, I think we could absolutely do it.
So I actually have a bit of a shameful story. I was only just eligible to vote, freshly turned 16 and not particularly politically engaged. I voted no. I then went and got a politics degree, and I am now an avid advocate for Scottish independence.
So you've gone full circle, really?
Full circle. I'm very ashamed to admit that I voted no. Like, I don't admit it to people often, something that I'll maybe only admit on a night out after a few wines, but it is one of my greatest shames. I really regret it, and I kind of wish that I didn't have the opportunity to vote when I was so sort of uninformed.
Do you think that was one of the factors, the fact that you were perhaps so young that you maybe didn't fully understand what was going on?
I think so. I think when you're that age, you tend to kind of vote whichever way your family votes still. You haven't really fully formed your own opinions at that point. And my parents are not politically engaged at all. My interest in politics happened completely off my own back a couple of years after the independence referendum. And I just think that there was so much information out there that it's really hard when you're that age to kind of even want to find out all that information off your own back. No 16-year-old, unless they've grown up in a really political family, is that interested in doing all that digging for themselves. You just kind of take what's fed to you.
Obviously, you would vote for independence. Why is that? Especially given a time where you look at the Scottish National Party and perhaps they're not going through the best spell they've ever been gone through.
Yeah, I still want to support the SNP. It is getting harder to do so, but I do think that an independent Scotland is the only way to sort of broaden the political horizon in Scotland and give the people of Scotland more options on who to vote for, because right now anyone who is pro-independence is essentially tied to voting either SNP or Greens, whereas if we have an independent Scotland, we have the ability to have a much wider political spectrum and a lot more political choice than we currently have. I think as well the EU referendum is a massive part of it. I now consider the Union to be undemocratic. We were told that if we remained in the Union, we would not leave the EU. That did not happen. There's a clear political divide on the topic of the EU between Scotland and the rest of the UK, or Scotland and England especially. And I just think with something that clear-cut and that massive, I think it's ridiculous that Westminster say they wouldn't allow another referendum, considering there's clear differences between the two countries that need to in some way be addressed.
I definitely remember it feeling like a really exciting time. All the teachers at our school gathered us for an assembly to talk about what a momentous occasion it was and how we were the first cohort of 16 and 17-year-olds to ever be allowed to vote, and that it was a big deal, and even some of the technicalities of this is how you vote and stuff, because they wanted us all to take it seriously and do our duty.
And how did you vote when you were 17?
So how I voted when I was 17 is very different to how I would vote now. At the time I voted no, and if there was to be another independent referendum, I think I would vote yes.
And what's changed your opinion then? Is that just experience, life experience then, that sort of changed your views?
Life experience, just meeting different people. I think when you are 16 and 17, you only know the people that you know in your kind of insular bubble, the people who you're at school with in this case.
Do you think we will see an independent Scotland anytime soon in your lifetime, or do you think it's less likely now than it was when you voted 10 years ago?
I think it feels less likely now than it did 10 years ago. Again, I don't know if that's just the shift of time. When you're 17, you think that you can, you can make anything happen or not happen, but you it feels like momentous things come around all the time, whereas being older, you feel like, I've seen loads of general elections since then, changes of leaders, changes to parties, parties changing their policies and stuff, so it feels like it's, more volatile than ever, and probably, I would like to see the people of Scotland get a chance to give their opinion once and for all another time, but it doesn't feel like it's very close.
Yeah, so I remember I had just turned 16 in August, and it was all who could vote, who couldn't vote in my year at school. I remember there being a lot of talk from the older generation not wanting us to vote for independence. There was quite a lot in my family as well, disagreement. But I remember just feeling this sense of I want to do the right thing, and I think the family members that I aligned myself with and the friends that I had, we all had the same idea that independence meant you know, Scotland, you can vote for what you actually want, and it's not decided by anybody else, and it's your own country. And while I will admit I was not, you know, a politics mogul, I didn't know a lot, I think it kind of sparked something in me to want to live in a better country, live a better way, and like just do the right thing. So while I didn't fully understand it at that age, I'm really glad that I got to vote. I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to vote, and I think that it's definitely helped me growing up understanding why politics is the way it is and what we should do, you know.
Yeah, and so obviously you just said you voted yes.
Yes.
When you were 16.
Yeah.
So 10 years on, if we had another referendum anytime soon, would you vote the same way?
Yes, I would. I would vote the same way. I think that sense of wanting to be independent has gotten stronger over the years, especially actually growing up and like living in an environment where I've seen the effects of not being an independent country, Brexit happening, and basically everything being super expensive, not having the same access that we would to healthcare. There's just so many things that I think would be different if Scotland was an independent country, and I think that we do have the right to be able to vote for that again because it was so close. Even 10 years ago, I think a lot has changed and a lot of people will have changed their opinions as well.
And it's been quite an eventful time as well for the SNP over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Do you think now would be the right time, or do you think we should wait a little bit longer before trying to get another referendum?
I think, I mean, I'm saying from my point of view and from, you know, the people that I know that are my age, I think we would vote in a heartbeat. I think with the recent election of Labour, you know, being in charge now, things are being spoken about more now. I think that now it's more important than ever to get these things changed, really. And I think that a referendum would be, you know, a good idea to do in the next year or so, because I think that people are talking about politics more, younger people are talking about politics more, and I think that we're all really feeling the effects of what the UK decides for Scotland. Even with the recent election, this is just from my own point of view, but so many people that I know were voting tactically because they didn't want the Conservative Party to be in power, but they might have not voted for Labour if they knew that their vote would actually count. So I think that it is important that we should have another referendum pretty soon.
You know, obviously we had INDYREF 2014. What's your memories of it at the time?
Yeah, I've got quite distinct memories actually, because I think it was quite a big deal the first time going and voting for anything. So it was quite exciting, I think.
And what about, you know, the way you voted? Do you recall that?
Yeah, I voted no back then, and I would still probably vote no if there was another referendum.
And why is that?
I wouldn't pretend to be a political expert or know that much about politics, but I think there's an element of risk that in the unknown of Scotland becoming totally independent, and I probably just don't understand how that would be feasible enough. So I think in my head it's the safe option.
Is it, you know, the financial implications that, you know, things may not go well? You know, we've seen a deficit we've got recently that came out earlier this week, and, you know, possibly having to go cap in hand back down to London.
Yeah, I mean, I think economically, I think job security. I'm 26, so obviously got hopefully a long career ahead of me, and I think also off the back of Brexit, you know, that has only caused sort of issues for, you know, young people wanting to work in Europe and move to Europe. So I don't know if there would be similar implications of Scotland becoming independent as well, but yeah, in my mind they're two parts of the same thing.